Thanks for tuning into the For Those Made to Do podcast. We are your hosts, Mandy Sahota
and Bianca Pavel. This podcast is all about the doers who have achieved career success in the UAE and the stories that go with it.
In this episode, we are speaking to Dr Yasar Jarrar, a strategy consultant and professor at Hult. Yasar breaks down high-level strategy consulting, and we discuss themes such as identifying the core capabilities required to succeed in consulting, the benefits of learning to learn throughout your career, and the importance of applying your analytical skills in a strategy role. He shares all of this through his many anecdotes and experiences in the region.
If you'd like to know how an experienced professional can pivot into consulting, what public and private players can learn from each other, and how long the plan for a business strategy should be in a changing world, then grab a cup of coffee and tune in with us. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of For Those Made to Do. Today, we're talking about a hugely popular yet very niche topic, strategy consulting. This industry's adaptability to emerging trends, new tech, and rapid global shifts attracts some of the world's boldest and most capable talent. And the fusion between decision-making, problem-solving, and the art of shaping business vision creates the perfect cocktail for business innovation. But breaking into this industry can be very challenging, as you'd often find yourself competing with the best of the best. To shed some light on what happens at the very top, we invited a very special guest today. Welcome Dr. Yasar Jarrar, a highly experienced strategy advisor, author, professor, and public speaker with expertise in government, social impact, and education. As a partner at International Advisory Group, he leads on transformational projects, and in his previous partner positions at Bain and PwC, he led on government consulting while overseeing MENA strategy and global education practices. We're also very proud to have him teach management courses to our students here at Hult Dubai. Yasar, welcome to our podcast, and thanks for sitting down with me and Mandy today to break down this very big topic. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. Looking forward to this conversation.
It's great to have you. And as someone who's had the privilege of meeting you before and watching you teach, I really think that this conversation's going to be really informative today. I know you have a lot of good stories to share with us. But before we dive into the questions, let's begin with a little bit of an icebreaker. I'd like to ask you, from your experience, who has been the easiest to teach? Government officials, world leaders, consulting clients, or our students?
So I find the most challenging are the students because...
I knew you'd say that.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you why. They don't have a problem to solve. So they're there to look and imagine and think about the future and use and develop skills so that they will chart a career. I find it much easier to teach government officials or consulting clients, because that session would be all about a specific problem, a specific challenge that we're trying to all reach, so we have a common goal. So there's less imagination, much more concentration. When you're in an MBA class, it's all about imagining a future that is full of possibilities. Unbelievably exciting. The energy levels are through the roof, but teaching somebody who has the world as their oyster is much more challenging than somebody who's there to solve a problem or learn a specific skill.
You have a very impressive career history. Looking back, what were the defining moments that propelled your career to this level?
So let me start by saying I never planned to be a consultant. I think some people walk into consulting as a career thinking it's full of interesting things to do or maybe better pay. I wanted to always be an engineer. I started engineering. I did my PhD in mechanical engineering. And halfway through my PhD, I was working in the UK. I was in Birmingham. I was working with the Rover manufacturing plant. Rover was a fantastic car those days. The people who make Land Rover, Range Rover, they had Rover. And halfway through my PhD, working with them, they went bust. Rover, as we know it today, was sold for £1 because it had so much debt, somebody had just to take it over. Little did we know those days that whoever bought it didn't think it's a good idea to buy Rover. They wanted to shut down Rover. They closed down the whole factory. They didn't want to produce Rover. They only were interested in taking the engineers who make Land Rover. And I found the engineers, they flew to Germany to a little company called BMW, who used those engineers to design the X5. And then they sold Range Rover and Land Rover to somebody else. So I sat there thinking, let me see what just happened. I'm studying to be an engineer. I'm doing my PhD. This is one of the best known car brands in the world. In this transaction, I saw a lot of great engineers who designed the good stuff, and they were sold and bought like IP. The people who actually made the real big difference and the real money and the real change were the management. And it was a bit of an eye-opening moment for me, saying, does strategy matter more than technical design? Is management more important than technical knowledge? And it was a bit of a moment for me to think, I'm going to get into management, less into technical design. Not that one of them is better than the other, but in terms of adding value, I saw that if you have a good manager, you can make a successful company. If you just have good engineers, then the company might not be successful. So I jumped into management, went to a business school, and then I joined the government of Dubai as a strategy advisor. And then again, we had fantastic years in Dubai. That was I called it the boom years. I joined in the year 2000. We had a great decade in Dubai, built places like Internet City, Media City, and then every other government would come and say, can we learn from what you're doing? A lot of these governments had more money than us. They had more resources. Again, I sat down and thought to myself, what is the difference here? We don't have their money. We don't have their resources. We're succeeding because we're better at management. So, the financial crisis happened. I get a call from PwC saying, would you like to join us? And it was time for me to change careers. So I jumped ship. I joined PwC and I started seeing how strategy and management and strategy consulting adds genuine value and is the difference between success and failure. It's not resources. It's not even technical knowledge. It's how you manage those resources. So I stumbled into it. And then here's a word of warning. Once you get into strategy management consulting, it's addictive. Because the value you can add by helping somebody put the right strategy in their life, in their company, in their country, the value you can add is second to none.
Wow. And that's interesting. It leads me on to my next question, actually, because your consulting business, IAG, your mission is disrupting the consulting model to deliver value. So obviously leveraging what you've just told us, how are you achieving this?
So here's the thing. With strategy is about deciding what to do and what not to do. Because everybody wants to be everything. Everybody wants to be the best and the healthiest and the richest, but that's fine. But deciding what not to do helps you focus on what you should do. So you decide that, and we always say strategy is about where to play and how to win. So we help people decide where to play. I've worked in companies that help people decide where to play, figure out where to play. And then again, there's another layer of success where I find out if you decide where to play but don't know how to win, it doesn't matter. Execution eats strategy for breakfast. If you have the right direction, the people who execute best are the ones who win. So when we decided to establish IAG, it wasn't because we're going to do strategy consulting better than anybody else. Look, the world is full of McKinsey, Bain, PwC. These are fantastic advisors. We come in and say, we will help you execute this strategy. We will work with you. We will partner with companies. So what we're disrupting here is saying we want to discuss with you the results you want to achieve, and we want to partner with you in delivering those results. Don't pay us for a process. Don't pay us for delivering a document. Mm-hmm. Don't pay us for delivering a strategy. If you go to your doctor now or your coach and you say, I want to lose weight or build muscles, do you want to pay that coach for giving you a plan of how to build muscles, or you want to pay him when you get the muscles? So what we do in IAG say, don't pay us for the plan. That's easy. You can develop that. You can buy that. When you get the muscles, pay us. So let's pay for results. And we know that for you to succeed, we have to work with you for the long term, and we have to really put our skin in the game. And we will only work with you if you think we can do it. So if I think you can't develop the muscles for any reason, I'm not going to get into this with you. And I'm not going to bluff you into saying, oh, no, pay me for a great plan, knowing in my heart that he will never make it or she will never make it. So that's how we're disrupting it. We're really focusing on results and being brutally honest. And sometimes I have clients who come to me and say, we want to be the number one in this. And I say, it's not going to happen. The way you're doing things, the way you're putting yourself, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to bluff you. I'm not going to give you a piece of plan that's not going to happen. I'll tell you what you can be number one at, but it's probably not what you aspire to. Sometimes, most of the times, people don't like that, right? None of us wants to be told that you're never going to be a full-on entrepreneur. But sometimes even my students come to me in the MBA and say, here's what I'm doing. Here's my CV. Here's my trajectory. Here's my set of skills. And I want to be this. And sometimes I say, maybe you should consider something else. So we can't keep telling people you can all be amazing at everything. Everybody has to play to their strengths. That's what we tell our clients.
Yeah. And that's what I tell the students as well. So,
Yeah. I'm just really curious. When you're telling a client, I don't think you'll get there, where do you get that confidence to say that?
Look, strategy is about capabilities. And certain set of capabilities you can acquire, certain set of capabilities you can build. But there's also external factors. And when you talk to a client, and I'm not going to be able to name names, but when you look at a certain company who says we want to do certain things that we know they either haven't built the capabilities for or haven't prepared themselves to face the external factors. We never say to somebody never. Unless there's a very clear impediment of why you're not going to deliver that, we never say never. But we say with the current rules, with your current capabilities, you cannot get there. Now, if you want to take the very hard slog of building different capabilities, we can have a conversation. Or we can help you build those. If you want to get there by 12 months, you're not going to get there. If you have the patience to wait for 5 years, you might get there. So we never say never. Luckily for us, there has been enough bad advice given out in the industry to say, look, these people were told to do this, Rover went bust, Kodak went bust while Instagram was growing. So there's a lot of people who were told they could be X and they couldn't make it. It's much better to have a very honest conversation. And this is not something that is easily done. This is not something you can do if you want to triple your business every 2 years, because most clients would like to hear that their vision is amazing and somebody who will work with them on it. Only with time can you say that track record can help. So not everybody likes to hear that. We lose a lot of people who come to us and say, fine, we'll find somebody else who will do it for us. It's not like we're eye-opening for many people. Some people think, no, I will do it. So it's very hard.
Yeah. This takes me back to an episode where we talked about sales and marketing, and we had this anecdote of when our guest said no to a client because the client was asking for a specific quote for a certain product that they wanted to buy from our guest. And he just said, I need more information and I need to speak to more people in your business to really understand what the plan is, what your need is, what the plan is, so we can put together something comprehensive for you. And the client basically declined on that. And yeah, in the end, they just had to say no. So I think there is value in choosing the people you work with and in choosing the clients that you decide to take forward.
Look, the professional services industry is built on one thing. We don't sell knowledge. Everybody can hire MBAs. Although I have a lot of time for MBAs, everybody can hire them. Everybody can hire PhDs. We don't sell intellect. We're not the cleverest people out there. Most of our clients are much more capable in their industry than we ever will be. We sell trust. And trust is all about saying the right things. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and track record. If you are the one who keeps telling every single person who walks into your gym that you're going to become Mr. or Mrs. Olympia, then within 3 years, nobody will come into your gym because you single-handedly lied to every single one of them. Whereas if you say, I only worked with 5 people, but look at them now, then suddenly that trust and that reputation you've built over 5 years with a track record, everybody will believe you. So it's hard to say to a client no now, but if you genuinely feel it's no, it's better to walk away and bank on that credibility, because he or she was going to walk into somebody else's business. They will say yes to them, give them the wrong advice, and over time, it will prove wrong. So this is not about being virtuous or being sort of the most moral compass out there. It's a genuine business decision to only do the things that you think will succeed, because it will take a lot of time to build a brand. And what people genuinely buy in consulting is a brand and a trust. And if you lose that trust, it's very hard to rebuild it.
So if we take a look at the work you've done in the private sector now, you've advised organizations such as DHL, Emirates Airlines, Shell, Saudi Aramco, just to mention a few. How do private sector strategies and innovations intersect with public sector in this region? And in your opinion, what can these two players learn from each other?
So look, I think this is an area that's closest to my heart. When I started working in the UK, I was a research fellow at the Cranfield School of Management, and my post there was effectively funded by private sector companies who I worked with as an advisor, thought leader. I used to help, including DHL and others. And I started working those days on things that have to do with performance management and better performance in terms of productivity and in terms of competitiveness, and wrote a report those days about how the gap between great organizations and those who are not so great, And, the conclusion was management makes all the difference. And somebody in Dubai those days read that report. Out of the blue, I get a phone call while I was sitting in Cranfield, and the government of Dubai wants to talk to you. It's the Executive Office of His Highness, the Crown Prince. We read your report. And they invited me. So the invitation was, come work for us and apply those private sector concepts you write about in government. And it took me a while to think, how is this going to work? And then, of course, I started working in Dubai. We started applying those things. We started the Government Excellence Program. We applied the balanced scorecard across the government. And slowly but surely, we started doing more and more on that and realizing that management is management. If you have a certain set of resources and you want a result, it doesn't matter what kind of sector you're in. It's the same process. You take resources, turn them into results. There's a lot of nuances. The private sector chases profit, public sector chases outputs, outcomes, policies, but still the process is the same. In fact, I always said that Dubai is one of the best managed cities in the world, and the leader of Dubai is a CEO. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, I saw him as a CEO. In fact, I wrote a book called The Sheikh CEO, explaining all his tools of management, and those are all borrowed from the private sector. Now, having said that, there's a lot of cross-learning, and today we're seeing the lines being blurred by the private and the public sector. So, I'll give you the flip example. If you're a private sector company now, operating in this world, in any country, you need to know as much as on foreign policy. And you need to know as much as geopolitics and geoeconomics just to be successful. Whether you're in Italy, Jordan, the UAE. So now we're going back to the private sector and say, your company needs a foreign policy. You can't operate as a company who works within this world saying, I'm a company, I don't do politics. I'm not interested in politics. I'm not interested in the World Trade Organization. Conflicts. The cost of oil. All of these are geopolitics that will have a direct impact on your business. So now not only is the public sector learning management tools and techniques from the private sector, like innovation, performance improvement, talent management, I think those were the easy things to teach because they're very clear. You can measure performance this way. They do it in the private sector. DHL does a performance management system, which we applied in the government of Dubai, by the way. Easy as in it's a system. It's much harder now the other way around to go to CEOs and say you need a foreign policy advisor. You need to know that what's happening somewhere around the world, improving the cost of one of your inputs and what you need to hedge for is part of your core business. You need to know that labor, the new types of labor, working from home, working from a distance, this is going to impact your HR contracts. So I think there's a lot of learning between the two sectors. And I think that's probably the future of business schools, is to be able to cross-fertilize the learning between the two.
Absolutely. And in our first podcast episode, we sat down with Namrata, our dean, and we talked about the future of work and the role of business schools in shaping that and also in shaping tomorrow's business leaders. And we were talking about how the world of work is becoming more and more agile and more fluid. So back to your point of you need someone that is looking outwards and is understanding what's happening in the world, what's trending in the world, and how your business needs to adapt to different social and political climates in other parts of the world is becoming crucial. And I think that's something that our listeners can take away from today. And anybody who's running a business right now or who's about to join the business world very soon should really start looking into that. I think that's exciting.
Today, MBA students who want to lead business in the future have a very tough job because in the past, we used to prepare people to become managers of a certain segment or a company. And we used to say to them, here's the 5 skills you need to be good at management. You need to know finance, marketing, boom, 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 you're ready. Today, we're telling them, God help you. You need to be a futurist. You need to be a technologist. You need to understand green economy and sustainability. You need to understand emotional intelligence. You need to have resilience. You need to have political intelligence. None of these things are skill sets. These are capabilities and attitudes. So it's much harder now to succeed and be a great leader and even a great manager. And the skill sets that you need are much wider and much more diverse. And the only constant now is unbelievable change. Not even normal change, just unbelievable amount of change. So today is the slowest day of your life, right? Tomorrow is going to be faster. And it's never going to look back. So if you think whatever you do now is fast, hectic, difficult to learn, it's just going to get more hectic. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of learning. And that's why we find ourselves learning from anybody who's agile, governments, private sector, public sector. I think the lines are being very blurred now. It was much easier in the older days when you can say, you're in this sector, here's what you need to know, move on.
We'd really love to dive in a bit deeper into how you think businesses can achieve that balance between long-term strategic planning and the need for agility and being responsive?
So that's a very tough question that requires a whole degree to answer, but let me try to do it very quickly in a few examples. I think the problem with businesses today is a lot of businesses who have shares that are traded are focused on the quarterly cycle of share prices. I call that lack of strategic vision. If you just sold to the world that you're going to make the share price go up, that's an example of very short-term vision, and you're selling short-term objectives. If you're a business that has a very clear game plan for the next 10 years, you have articulated that strategy very clearly, and you sold it to people, shareholders, employees, everybody will follow you to the end if you create the right excitement and vision for the future. And we've seen that example with places like Amazon. Amazon just turned profit in the last few years. He spent 20 years burning money, telling them, I'm doing this strategy, but here's my strategy. I'm getting more people on the platform. I'm getting more businesses on the platform, and one day I will turn profit. And the investors kept behind him. If he started from day one saying, I don't have a strategy, I'll just make money, he would have closed down in year one because he wasn't making money for the first 20 years. So if you're a business, you can have a long-term strategy and say, this is what I want to be when I grow up. Now you have the real issues of cash, and you have to collect cash and you have to sell, and that's very important. That's called management. But if you're managing towards a goal, it's different from managing day to day. Managing day to day and just trying to cover the cash costs every day with no vision, that means employees will be less likely to work with you. Customers will probably be less likely to work with you. Even banks will not. Banks, when they give you money as a loan, they never give you bank money as on only on the balance sheet now, on your current valuation and NPV of what's your potential future income. They look at the future potential. If it's only current valuation, not a single startup would get money. What are startups at the end of the day? They sell dreams. They sell visions. So all I'm saying here is that businesses need to manage day to day. If you have a good service or a good product, you need to be able to sell and be very diligent about making sure the costs are being covered and that you're growing. But that is not good business. Good business has a trajectory and a very clear strategy of how you will grow in the future. And if you're not going to grow in the future, if you're just planning to do a business that has cost recovery day to day, then these businesses are on their way out. It's a corner shop that's waiting to be acquired by Carrefour. It's a small shop that is waiting to be acquired by not waiting to be acquired because they have a strategy, because somebody will take them out. I don't think there's room in the future for businesses that are purely the old style, open a small corner shop, sell a few things, you can cover your costs, make a small margin and move on. Now we're going to see economies of scale, digitization, and if you don't play by the new rules, we know that this polarization and the gap is increasing.
I'm going to shift a little the conversation from reflecting on management and kind of internal processes, but also talking again at a high level, because you have such extensive experience here in the Middle East. What role do regional collaborations and partnerships play in addressing shared challenges? For example, the line between KSA and UAE.
First of all, let's start at the whole global level. Globally, we have problems today that have become stubborn problems. Stubborn problems as in they're there for the last 20 years and they're going to continue to be there and we cannot solve them.
Like global warming.
Like global warming. But, even smaller things like World Trade Organization. You know that the World Trade Organization, for example, hasn't had a full functioning dispute system for the last 4 years. So we put all these rules, but when somebody breaks the rules, we cannot hold them accountable. And the only thing that we see in the world now that seems to be certain in the next 5 years is we're going to have more fragmentation. So there's a lot of problems that can only be solved by collaborating. But the way nation states are built now, everybody has to look after their own needs and their own people. So you have this whole G0 force where everybody to their own. And it's a very difficult balance now to say, how can I look after my own internal components of my borders, my economy, while working with others when I need to? And what is the shared vision that we can achieve together? And you will find, I think, moving forward in the world that a few people will start working together for shared prosperity and they will win. Others will inherently become more isolationist and they will lose in the long term. But it's going to be hard for them to see that now. It's almost shooting yourself in the foot, saying, I will close my borders, I'm going to look after my own people. And we say, actually, by looking after your own people and telling everybody else you don't want to play, you're keeping yourself out of a game that's only winnable by playing with other people. So when I look at the UAE and Saudi, for example, a lot of people have this discussion about they're competing. We all compete. I go to Australia and I find the states competing with each other for tourists, between Queensland and New South Wales, for example. It doesn't mean that they're on bad terms. It means that when it comes though to mutual benefit, they all align on the same direction. So I look at the UAE and Saudi, a lot has been made about this competition. I think this competition between UAE and Saudi has been phenomenal for both. I think, when the rising tide lifts all boats, it's in UAE's benefit to have an unbelievably strong, stable and growing Saudi economy. And in the Saudi benefit for them to have a very strong, stable and growing UAE economy. Now the competition comes in, I want to have a better media city than you, and I want to have a better media city than, and that's fine. And we need that. Imagine, let me flip it. Imagine if there was no competition. You know how things will quickly go down and spiral down. If you have no competition, what happens? You become a monopoly. In a company, you have no competition. By default, you will rule yourself out of the market and somebody will come to take over. So I think the competition has been fantastic. Having said that, this is not competition at all costs. Focusing back to your question on Saudi and the UAE, there's a lot of collaboration when things matter. There's a lot of regional agreements. Both Saudi and the UAE, for example, decided or are considering joining BRICS Plus. That's something that they're moving to in unison. They have the same voice when it comes to negotiation. They're both in the same blocks when it comes to resources and so other places. So I think there's nothing called perfect competition or perfect collaboration.
Keeping this in mind then, and given that, say, for example, Dubai does have a long-term vision, 2030, 2050, which industries do you think is the sweet spot for people looking to, say, like relocate here, be here, kind of excel here in their careers? Where do you see the most impact kind of coming from in the kind of short term, next 5 years?
So look, in my view, I think there's a lot of new sectors that are growing in the world, right? And there's a lot of generic skills you have to learn to be in those sectors. I can tell you a lot about, things like, technology sectors, biotechnology sectors, green sectors, sustainability. So if you were asking me what kind of career advice do we give the kids today, or do we give MBA students, I think the career advice is very simple. Learn how to learn. Because everything you have learned today is useless in 6 months. If you were the best coder in Python 6 months ago, we don't need you now.
Yeah,
I talk to ChatGPT and produces the code. So 6 months ago, if you ask me, I say teach them Python. Small example. So learn how to learn. Lifelong learning. If you ask me why should people come to Dubai and what they would excel in, think connectivity. This is one of the most connected places on earth. 1/3 of international flights that go out of India come through Dubai. India is 1.5 billion people. They come through Dubai. We are the most connected place on earth, I think, at least in the emerging earth, the new markets.
I always say
India,
there's like
Africa.
2 degrees of separation here
Absolutely.
than it would be, say, in any other place.
If you look at the next 20 places around the world in 2024 that will grow, double the global average. So the global average growth, World Bank is thinking 2.9 to 3%. There's 20 places that will all double the global average. They're going to push 6% above. They're all in Asia or Africa. So if you want to be in a place where the world is growing, you can go to India, but then you're in the Indian economy. You can go to Lagos, but you're in the Nigerian economy. You can go Vietnam, very exciting. If you want to be able to see them all, come to Dubai. Because you sit in Dubai, you go in Muraqabat Street, and you see the Indian trader dealing with the Filipino trader, and you see the African guy meeting the Chinese guy. You see the lady from Kazakhstan doing a deal with somebody from Oman. It only happens here. So if you want to build the business of connectivity, global scale, you come here. If you want to go for the Saudi market and benefit from the Saudi market, the Egyptian market, the Indian market, go there. But when you're ready to go global, you come here. So there's no sector. Dubai is sector agnostic. 5 years ago, Mandy, if you did this interview with me, I wouldn't have said bring e-payments or virtual coins to the players to Dubai. I would have said come and do logistics and come. And now we're the hub of some of these things because they decided this is where you can go global. So it's not about sectors in Dubai. It's about chasing connectivity. It's addictive.
We push connectivity a lot, especially in my role, the students that come here internationally. In your role as a partner in the consulting industry, how much focus went into this relationship building, given that there are 2 degrees of separation here in this region, and securing new businesses versus advising existing clients and solving business problems?
World runs on connectivity. I think connectivity is the rocket fuel. I think if you're a student who comes to an MBA in Hult, or anywhere else, your number one takeaway from the school is connectivity. Because everybody can teach you strategy. What I do in Hult, I teach a course. But a lot of people teach those courses. Connectivity, the connections you make, the people that you're in class, where they go, how you keep those relations is the rocket fuel for your future career. And it's the same thing for consultants. We used to sell consulting in the older days through people who send us requests for proposal. and it comes with the facts and people apply. But the actual rocket fuel of consulting is relationships. Who trusts you? Who thinks you're doing a good job? So the best formula for selling in consulting is to do an unbelievably amazing job for your current clients. And if you do that and you add value, they will take you by the hand to the next one and the next one. Because guess what CEOs and ministers have in common? Other CEOs and other ministers. So if you're working for a CEO and she is leading a great technology company, did a great job, guess who she's going to be having dinner with the next day? Another CEO or another minister. And that minister say, we're struggling with this. And she's going to say, I'm working with these guys. You should talk to them. Best way of selling is to do a great job. Selling through relationships and hustling, that's the old model. That's the car sales model. That's the older generation who used to go door to door, knocking on the door saying, we can do this, we can do that, especially in professional services. Because what you sell is trust and ability to add value. And the only way to get trust sold is by somebody else as senior as you telling you, I trust them. So if Bianca tells you she trusts me, you're much more likely to work with me than me coming at your door and showing you a brochure of the company and what we do and 700 slides of other logos we have worked with. That doesn't work anymore. So connectivity is unbelievably important. But again, I go back to the MBA class. It's genuine connectivity. It's not collecting business cards and saying, we know this, I know, I have her email, I have his email. It's spending a whole year together, becoming a comrades, brothers in arms, sisters in arms, shared experiences. That becomes the real solid rocket fuel. And everybody who has graduated from an MBA or any other learning program vouches to say, that's how I got my next job. That's how I got my next gig. The first thing, if you're a startup and you want to raise money, you look around who you studied with. They will help you. So I focus a lot on building relations, but I prefer to build 3 to 4 genuine relations per year than meeting 100 people who I have their business card and I can call them. Those are just contacts, and contacts don't do much.
I think that's really great advice. And it kind of links up with what we talked about in our third episode when we looked at corporate finance and consulting. We had an associate director from Deloitte, and we talked a bit about how important brand building is within the consulting world and how you can get the best projects if you build that great reputation and people will want to bring you into their projects. And now to kind of twist the question at a more senior level, we're working with a lot of students who want to break into consulting, but who already have some experience. So they're coming to do their MBA or even executive MBA with us, and then they want to go into strategy consulting. What would be your advice to them in terms of pivoting into consulting, and how can they articulate their competitive advantage?
So look, there's a few ways, and I get asked that question a lot by also students. There's a few ways to get into consulting. One, if you're young enough, you join consulting firms. And the thing about consulting firms, which are the big 4, the big strategy 3 and others, is they have worked all these years to establish a brand. So if you're working for those companies, you don't have to do a lot of the lessons I mentioned in terms of personal relationship building, because they have established a corporate brand. So people who work with Deloitte or McKinsey want to work with Deloitte and McKinsey. Then it's up to you to grow your industry, And if you want to join them, you can just apply to them. But typically those consulting firms like to hire people at a younger age. It's not about ageism, because then they can shape them and you can grow within the company. They would only take you if you have X number of years of experience, what we call the specialized track. If they are looking to grow in a certain industry and they don't have enough locally homegrown talent. So when I finished with the government of Dubai and I wanted to move on to consulting, they called me and they said, we're growing a government practice and we want people like you. I could have never applied and knocked on the door and submit my CV to join a consulting firm at that age with that years of experience if they were not growing in that sector. So one answer is, if you're lucky enough and you work in a sector, say logistics, fashion, and that seems to be a booming sector and they need people like you, they would take you into an experience track. If that's not a booming sector, which is the majority of people that talk to me, and you want to leave your manufacturing company and join consulting, you're working with a ship manufacturer and you want to join consulting, then the question is, how can you start your own firm? And you can only start off your own firm if you know that there's enough need in your industry for some new ideas. So you become your own client. If you want to join chip manufacturing company, I will ask you, is there enough need in that chip manufacturing? Are there problems they can't solve? You've been working in there for 10 years. Have you seen white spaces? If yes, go out. 2 of my students, by the way, both of them were based in Abu Dhabi, were in the MBA class. They came to me and I said, why do you want to join the consulting firms? Is there a white space that you can? And she said, oh my God, one of them, she said, oh my God, there's a lot of issues in our company about the efficiency of supply chains. And I said, there you go. Start a consulting company about helping your own company on supply chain efficiency. She's doing very well now. She has 3 big companies who are her clients. And suddenly, when one of them trusts you, again, They tell the other, and they tell the other, and there you go. So the best thing is to find the white space if you have experience. Because if you have experience, guess what? You know that industry very well. But I can tell you, consulting isn't for the faint-hearted. With all the fun, enjoyment, satisfaction you get out of consulting, a big chunk of starting your own consulting firm is being able to sell your services. And that's a very different skill from adding value in a consulting project. So you need to have some partners or other people to help you, or you need somebody to put up their hand and say, I need help. But I can tell you, the future is going to be for small to medium enterprise consulting.
On that note, if we're looking into the future and we're seeing all of these new consultants that are going to start their businesses and also others that are going to be lucky enough to be recruited by the top consulting firms, when it comes to them preparing for that future, what are some of the critical skills and qualities that future advisors need to cultivate right now in order to succeed in the future?
So this is a very much fast evolving space. And let me tell you the 3 skills I advise everybody who wants to get into consulting to start honing, because they will need them more and more. First of all, everybody has to remember, consultants are not the cleverest people in the room. Nobody's hiring you because they don't know their business. If you're consulting to a hospital, every single person in that hospital knows more than you about hospital management. What consultants do is we bring order to chaos. You walked into a place that's full of chaos, people talking over each other, their processes have grown organically into a mess, and we bring order to that. So the clarity of thought, being able to see and connect the dots, that's what we call analytical thinking. Being able to connect 2 dots that are not connectable by an expert is the most important skill a consultant could have. You hone this skill by teaching yourself a lot of analytical thinking, complex problem solving. I like all my students and employees to learn complex systems. And complex systems are those wide systems that you can draw a complex systems map where something happening somewhere, the butterfly effect, affects your business. That ability to see the connections and connect the dots and bring order to chaos is what consultants do. It is not being able to go and lecture somebody in a car manufacturing company about their business, because they know better than you. You can't walk into a bank and sit with the CEO, CFO, and 700 accountants and lecture them on finance. If you think that's what consulting is, then you're getting into the wrong industry. Those are specialized people. You might go into academia. Only academics who spend their life studying microfinance can go and lecture people in finance. So the first thing is being able to bring order to chaos. The second thing is continuous fast learning. Your value as a consultant is always being ahead of the curve. You have to be 5 steps ahead of your clients and everybody else. Otherwise, what's the point? And in the past, being 5 steps ahead of the curve was reading 2 books a year. Today is reading 7 books a day, right? So you have to be able to leverage technology, leverage all these resources that are out there. How do you use all the apps that are out there? How do you leverage artificial intelligence? What do you do with ChatGPT now? PwC announced 5 days ago that they will start using ChatGPT to do due diligence for their clients. That means they don't have to hire people, right? Or does that mean they have to hire more people? So basically they say AI will not take your job. Somebody using AI will take your job. So if you want to go into consulting now, you start honing your ability to learn. Because today it's AI, we get all excited about it. Tomorrow it's going to be something else. So how are you a fast learner? And if you're not a fast learner who can grasp unbelievable amounts of information very quickly and make a concerted and clear decision, you can't get into the business. And the third thing is empathy. Being able to walk and talk with people, empathize with their problems, and what I call the political quotient. Understanding sources of power, having a wide-angled vision, understanding who is with whom, what kind of alliances. So they're 2 almost left and right brain. The first thing is purely left brain, very strong analytical skills. You can train your brain on analytical skills, and we've always said that, and there's a lot of tools, and being able to connect the dots, and that's complex systems thinking. The second thing is being able to learn fast. That's an attitude. That's a love for learning. If you don't love learning something new every day, don't get into consulting. And the third thing is this ability to empathize with people, understand their issues, because the one thing we actually sell is understanding our clients' issues, putting ourselves in their shoes and being able to understand the problems and solving it for them. And that's the exciting part of consulting as a career versus consulting as a job. If you want consulting as a job, i.e. you go into a job, you are told what to do by the partner, you produce the slides and you leave that industry after 3 years, that's fine. You can enjoy consulting as a job, gives you some skills you do. If you want consulting as a career, you better be an unbelievable analytical thinker, see with the big picture, fast learner, and be able to empathize. And there are different sets of skills I advise depending on what you want to do with consulting. And I want to end on this note, on this question. There's nothing wrong with having consulting as a job. In fact, I advise all my students who are of a certain age, start in the consulting space. It just teaches you logical thinking skills and analytical thinking and being able to connect the dots that you will carry with you forever. Even if you don't want to continue in consulting, start there. Get a few years on the back. It's like in the older days, again, showing you how old I am, we used to send kids to Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts gave you resilience skills, being able to work with others, being able to work as a team, being able to trust each other. Those are skills you carry with you forever. It's not that you want to be a professional Boy Scouter or Girl Scout for the rest of your life, but these core skills is what consulting gives you. So consulting as a job, everybody should do it for a part of their life. Consulting as a career, not for everybody. Only people who are A-type personalities and change junkies.
Yeah. And I remember I had the privilege to, like I mentioned earlier, to sit in your class. And you basically, I remember you saying that you described people who do consulting as a career, they have to have like a Top Gun Maverick type of personality. Like you have to be willing to go like above and beyond and be able to think outside the box. And when I'm coaching the students and they're telling me they want to go into consulting, you know, there is an element of having to give them a hard truth to be like, okay, do you have the capabilities? But I think I totally see why it appeals to them as well, purely on this basis.
Well, look, you use the example of Top Gun. The CEOs that you're consulting to, that you're helping, the people who hire you, the ministers, these are people who are on top of their career. If your client is the CEO of DHL, you know how good he or she is in their business to be the CEO of DHL or the Bank of Scotland. I mean, I'm mentioning my clients, but anybody else, Ford, Emirates Airlines. If you're going to go and consult to Emirates Airlines, these people are on top of their career. So they are the best of the best. So why would they hire a consultant? Either they want to hire a consultant because they have a job that nobody wants to do. And there's a type of consulting where people just want to do the humdrum, do this process re-engineering. But that's not what my students are always interested in. Or they want somebody to take them out of their comfort zone, show them future growth, show them things they have never heard of, show them what we call adjacencies. If you're in this business, what else can you do? How can you use your core skills to grow the business? Those are mavericks. Some of you have seen Top Gun, and Maverick was the one who broke the speed limit, was the one who tested that machine up to its limit, was the one who tried maneuvers nobody else can try. If they just wanted to have good people who know their industry, they don't hire consultants. They hire COOs, CFOs. They hire people in their company who know the industry. So you only bring consultants for their wide-eyed view. And yes, they are mavericks. And again, while Top Gun was exciting and everybody wants to be a maverick, not everybody enjoys being a maverick. There's a lot of instability. You don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. A mistake could cost you your whole career because, as I said, you build your reputation to it. 20 years to build a reputation, 5 seconds to lose it, right? So it's not for everybody, but if you do get it right, it's unbelievably exciting. It's addictive. And you can't go back to quote-unquote normal jobs after that.
That's a really great place, I think, to draw the conversation to a close. We have some broad questions and you gave us some priceless advice. So we thank you for that. As someone, like I said, had the pleasure to sit in your elective that you teach here at Hult, I do recommend our students to choose it as one of their electives during the summer because I think it will give them a great entry point that they can kind of leverage and see where it takes them. We always close off the episode with a teaser of the wildcard question. We ask the question to give our listeners an opportunity to digest the conversation that we've just had, and then they have space to go out and think of the question themselves and how they would themselves approach it. So tune into the bonus episode next week to hear Yasar's response. But I am going to drop the question now and give you a teaser. So, Dr. Yasar, how would you answer the following question? How do you consult on projects that fall into the area of megatrends? When there is limited access to case studies, history, data to back up the strategies that you create, is there a formula? So we'll pause there. We'd like to thank you for your time speaking to us today. It's been a really great, insightful conversation, and we look forward to hearing your response in the bonus episode.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.